Hello, hi, welcome everyone. Just waiting for folk to join and trickle in. Hi, hello. It's so lovely to have you here today. We're going to spend around 45 minutes talking about the mistakes we see that mean nothing ever changes from your employee surveys. And along the way, we're going to share real examples, tips, and tricks that you can take away and use from today. So hopefully very, very interesting for you. A couple of notes on Zoom webinars because I appreciate you may not have joined us for one before. Please make sure you click on chat. It'll be at the bottom of your window somewhere. And then toggle the blue drop down to everyone, just so that if you do want to chat, share ideas, share tips of your own, it comes through to everyone on the webinar. And the Q&A box is also available. So any specific kind of questions you want me to get to, do make sure you get them in nice and early because people can upvote them. And the earlier you get them in, the more likely you are to have your question answered. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat too and where you're from. It's always great to see who's with us today. So let's get started. And I'm going to share my screen so I can see the numbers have kind of settled now. So I'm Lucy, by the way, COO here at Stribe. We build employee survey software specifically for smaller HR teams. So a quick note, this webinar today isn't some kind of long product demo. It's a session about why surveys stop working and what actually fixes that. I'm sharing lots of tips and we'll talk through some of the way our customers work with us as well and the successes they see too. So like I said, drop any questions into the Q&A as we go and I'll pick them up towards the end. Hi Sonia, it's so lovely to have you. I can see you've said hi in the chat. I see some others are being a little bit shy, but that's okay. Hopefully kind of warm up as the webinar gets going. So a quick question before we start. And I am going to, I've lost my webinar controls. Here we go. Just pop a poll live for you, which should be live for you now. I would really love to know, when did your last employee survey close? Pop your answer in the poll. It should be up on your screen now. I ask because the answer usually tells me a lot about which of these five mistakes is most relevant to you right now. And tell me in the chat, was it an annual? Was it a pulse? Was it more of a life cycle survey? What was going on that you used that survey for? Because it's really useful as we kind of go through just to give me an idea of what's going on. So 6+ months ago, that's fine, that's good. We're seeing a lot of customers at the moment coming to us with that kind of 6+ month mark. Typically they've kind of run one, they felt like they got some good results, but maybe that action planning piece stalled for whatever reason. So we're seeing a lot of people come to us for having those kinds of conversations right now. Right, so quite a nice mix in the room. Thanks for sharing that, everyone. And I will just move on. So here's a few things that I kind of see time and time again when I speak to HR teams and we're talking about those kinds of topics. So the survey closed usually weeks ago, which I think is what the poll kind of give us an indication of. The data's maybe sitting in a presentation somewhere, a presentation that probably took you weeks to prepare as well, and nothing has actually changed for staff yet. And that's not because you don't care, it's because the tools, the timing, and the process that most HR teams are working with just weren't built to get you from data to action quickly enough, clearly enough, or confidently enough, especially when you're in a team of just a few people who have, let's face it, about 15 other things going on. And that's kind of what today is about. And specifically the 5 mistakes that cause that gap, and how you feel and how you, sorry, can change some of your processes to make it feel like you have an extra person just working on those surveys alone. So hopefully buying you back a lot more time in your days. So We'll talk a little bit about the landscape first, and what we're seeing. So most of the people on this call, you're probably using one of these four things, and feel free to talk about this in the chat if this feels a little bit too close to home. Maybe it's given you a giggle. The first one is kind of that Microsoft Forms or Google Forms software. So totally fine tools. Built for really general surveys, but there's no necessarily like anonymity infrastructure, maybe no HR specific reporting, and the data just lands in the spreadsheet. And that is where I see the giggles and the smirks and the smiles, sorry, kind of come in. Is it really makes it difficult for that post reporting piece. So everything just gets stuck in those spreadsheets. The second is SurveyMonkey, which is a much better experience, but still a little bit generic. So it's built more for just any surveys, not necessarily specifically employee surveys. And that can make things like those team level drill downs and that team reporting really difficult too. POWWR might be a name that you've heard if you've done a little bit more research into employee surveys. So they're a really great specialized product. They're built for organizations with dedicated people analytics functions. There is a huge amount of information in their dashboards. If it's not you and you don't have that dedicated people analytics function, it can be expensive and it can be a little bit complicated for what you actually need. And there'll be a lot of people on this call who have nothing yet, and you maybe know you need to do something. You just maybe just haven't found the right fit for your software, or you're just on the start of your employee survey journey. So I'm going to talk through some of these and where each of these kind of survey softwares might also be contributing to your survey mistakes, because understanding that part of the gap is actually a really useful bit in this journey. Okay, so mistake one, your survey is too long and too infrequent. I'm just going to move, I have something hovering in front of this, so I'll just move that out the way. So mistake one, the annual 47 question survey. I think almost everyone on this call has either designed one of these or been subjected to one. Anyone guilty of it in the comments? It's a no judgment zone here, so let me know if that is one of a feature of your survey calendar, or it has been a feature of your survey calendar in the past. Everyone dreads it, staff rush through them, and by the time you've actually pulled the data, built the report, got it through exec, and actually acted on anything, 6 months have probably passed, and honestly, the world has just moved on. They usually happen because annual surveys only happen once a year, and we don't want to miss that opportunity to ask something about every single piece of the employee experience. But the thing that was bothering people in October, when you maybe asked that annual survey, is probably going to be different from what's bothering them in April. And that's the really damaging bit, when nothing visibly changes afterwards, when there's no feedback coming through, or that change doesn't feel relevant for staff anymore because things have moved on. Response rates drop on the next one, or your data quality will drop on the next one, because people have learned that filling these surveys in doesn't really lead to anything anymore. And the cost is kind of threefold here. I mentioned one already. The data quality becomes poor because those rushed responses, because they've kind of rushed through that really long survey, gives you unreliable scores. Staff see these really long surveys and they just want to get them done quickly. Your response rates will decline year on year too, and this is a really slow one. It's very hard to reverse once it starts, but it is there. And the third one, you're measuring a moment that no longer exists. So you're action planning on data that took weeks and months to process and may no longer reflect the situation anymore. The other thing worth saying, and this is where kind of Microsoft Forms and SurveyMonkey come in specifically, is neither of them really give you any guidance on question design. So your default is to ask everything and end up with a survey that's too long, questions that are probably usually double-barreled, and ultimately data that you can't really trust. The fix is a lot simpler than it sounds. Run shorter surveys, run them more frequently, and focus them if you need to on one survey at a time. It does take a little bravery, and as a thank you for your time today, we're actually offering free feedback sessions, so I can give you advice on how to move from those annual to pulse survey schedules if you're interested in chatting to me a little bit more about that. But the things to be thinking about here is, before you build any survey, ask yourself, what specific decision will I make from these results? If you can't answer that, the question isn't right and or the survey isn't right for you to be asking at that time. So thinking about that from our perspective, we actually built this into our tools. So Stribe's AI Builder can put together a really focused pulse survey for you in just a few seconds with questions that we've actually validated ourselves with the people scientists we have on our team. So you know you're going to be getting good data back and you know you're going to be building a great survey too. Another kind of idea is to look for question libraries. So we have a question library with benchmark questions built in. So you also get that external context, but there's lots of free resources out there that give you ideas for questions to help give you the confidence to just ask just a few within your survey. So mistake two, and this one is often kind of invisible to HR teams actually, but it can be one of the most damaging mistakes, and that's that your staff don't actually believe that your surveys are anonymous. So you might say that your survey is anonymous, but if it's running through things like your company's Microsoft 365 or your Google Workspace, or maybe IT could theoretically access it, or the results sit in a file that your manager controls, that's going to start kind of feeling more anonymous in name. And in a team of maybe if you've only got 12 people in certain teams and 3 of them have filled in the survey and only one of those had a bad quarter, maybe they know you can work it out. So what do people do? Your staff will answer your survey safely. They'll give you a version of events that they think you want to hear. You're going to get really comfortable data as well. You're not going to get honest data. And that bit makes this really hard to spot because your response rate will look fine. Your scores will look reasonable. And there's nothing truly obviously wrong, but the data isn't telling you the truth. And that's something to always be really mindful of. So the topics you need honest answers on, things like management quality, inclusion, mental health, how people are feeling about leadership decisions. These are exactly the topics that people are most likely to hold back on when they don't fully trust anonymity. So you get this kind of artificial positive score or a blunted version of reality. And the real problems stay hidden until they become maybe a resignation or a grievance or sickness absence. And trust around anonymity, once it's broken on this, is really difficult to rebuild. A declining response rate is something you might see if people are feeling unsafe around this kind of anonymity piece. So it can be quite a lagging indicator of how safe people feel, not just how engaged they are with your surveys. So it's something to kind of keep an eye out on. And apologies, I'm just going to move one more thing around on my screen because it is blocking my view. There we go. So how to fix this? One thing we do recommend always is an external platform, something that's genuinely independent and not within your IT infrastructure. Stribe sits outside of your company's systems entirely, and we also have a public-facing anonymity page that any employee can read before they fill in their survey. It explains exactly how their data is protected in plain English, so it's worth looking at something like that for your own systems. We also set minimum response thresholds. So if only kind of 2 people in that small team have responded, the data doesn't display. So there's lots of different protections in place there that really give employees that true trust in the tool. Because the whole point is that people need to actually believe that anonymity pledge. They don't just want to be told it. So there's lots of different ways that you need to think about that. So mistake 3, and this is the bit that is traditionally dreaded when survey season rolls around, and that's the analysis. By the time you've analysed it, it's just too late. So, the survey closes, your results get exported, someone needs to build the report, it goes to exec for review, then it maybe goes to leadership, then each of the teams need a report built too. And by the time anyone actually has a chance to communicate all of this to employees or start to act on anything, weeks and weeks and sometimes months have passed. And all of that time, your people are watching. They remember filling in that survey and they know they haven't seen anything or heard anything happen. They're mentally writing off the next one before you've even launched it. And everything you do action planning wise after that survey is going to be met with a little edge of cynicism. That hot moment, that post-survey moment, when people are still invested and when that conversation is still live, it's passed by before you can even make the most of it. And there is so much to this point. I could go on all day, but there's a few different things here to be thinking about. Um, if managers aren't getting their team level data until it's too late, and to be able to have that useful conversation with their teams as well, it makes them feel, let's be honest, a bit crappy. They're not going to feel as confident in the results. You're going to find it really difficult to get them behind those results. And they are the ones that will make the difference in your post-survey action planning, your post-survey comms piece, and that next survey too. Leadership will just see walls of numbers. If you're really struggling with that post-survey reporting, it's not going to be clear the story that they can act on, and they're going to deprioritize it because they, again, aren't confident in those numbers. It's likely while sometimes when you are working on employee surveys, you feel like you're going up against a brick wall. And with things like SurveyMonkey or Forms, the analysis is entirely on you. There's no AI pulling out themes, there's no exec summaries, and there's no suggested action areas either. It's just raw data that you have to turn into something useful while you're doing everything else on your plate as well. And that's where those kind of costs and problems really start to appear. So the goal really should be actionable kind of insights or actionable results within 24 to 48 hours of survey close. Now, that I know I can't hear any of you, but I know you will have taken a sharp intake of breath thinking about that process with your own kind of tools right now. And it can be difficult if you don't have the right tools for the job. So with Stribe, for example, we generate AI exec summaries the moment that your survey closes, and they pull out things like your themes, your hotspots, and the areas that need attention. They also give you ideas for action planning and future poll surveys as well that you might want to run to really get into the detail of some of your feedback. All of these are filterable by things like team, location, and tenure as well. So you've got some really interesting data to be drilling down into. And those reports as well, you should be looking for something where you can share kind of maybe a read-only link with leadership. That's something that we have in Stribe, so they can see the results as they come in. And that means that board conversation that you feel is a real stickler right now, it starts earlier and it starts with better, more confident data. So all of that process starts to feel easier for you. And those team level reports can go straight to managers. So they don't need to wait for you to build different reports, write their own commentary. That's all handled in the tool. And they don't need to wait for you guys to be working on that before they can start going away and getting their own team buy-in. So there's lots of different kind of tweaks you can make to really make that process feel much easier for you. So mistake 4, and this is the one that catches people out even when they think they're doing everything else right. And that's that your organization average is hiding the real story. Your organization average could be 7.2, and on paper that looks fine. Leadership is pleased, you're pleased, you move on. But inside that 7.2, excuse me, is maybe one team scoring 4.1, and they've been struggling for months. You've got people updating their CVs in that team, and the average for the organization has been marking that entire time. That's the hidden cost of reporting just at the organization level, or having tech that makes it really difficult to create those manager ready reports. You're smoothing over the problems that actually need your attention. And you also conversely kind of spreading your effort across the whole organization when maybe there's only just a few teams that really urgently need you. It's also really difficult for you to make a compelling case to leadership without that granular data, right? If the average looks okay, you're not going to get the budget or the headcount or the change you need to improve those scores. It means that things like resignations will start to feel sudden, and the data was there, it was just hidden. With some of these more generic survey tools like your Microsoft Forms or your SurveyMonkey, you have to go looking for those hotspots yourselves. Most HR teams just don't have the time to do that properly, so that kind of problem stays invisible. Stripe's heat maps surface those problem areas automatically, so you don't have to go looking. And you can also filter every report by team, location, job, role, tenure, whatever it is that's interesting to you. And that means that, you're starting to understand where those negative scores are clustering before they become bigger problems like resignation, sickness absence, or unproductivity. And when you've found the team that needs that attention, you can then share that team specific report directly with their manager. So they're able to have the right tools to have a really confident conversation with their people. And they're not waiting on that HR cascade that we know is so difficult when it comes to running surveys. Mistake 5. This is the big one, the one that makes everything else worse. And it should say, you ask, nothing changed, not your ask. You ask, nothing changed, and now nobody fills it in. The mistake that kills the whole survey program. So staff filled in the survey, they've heard nothing back, or maybe they've heard something back 3 months later, and that felt completely disconnected from what they actually said in the moment. That means they don't bother when that next survey comes around, and it means your response rate is declining. The data you get back is really thin and much sparser than before. And that's because the people who might have said something real have just given up. And this is the mistake that compounds all the others. You can fix your question design, you can improve your anonymity, you can speed up your analysis, and still lose the entire program if you don't close that feedback loop. So I wanted to show you what closing the loop properly actually looks like. And I love this example from POWWR, a Greater Manchester business who are a customer of ours. So they switched from Culture Amp to Stribe. And when they did, they managed to improve their eNPS from 22 to 71 in just 2 years, which was unbelievable work. It's not because they started asking better questions, it's because they were able to start closing that feedback loop properly. So one really amazing example I love is in a survey they ran with Stribe, the word dentist kept popping up in the word clouds that we produce in their reports. It turns out when they started to dig into this, staff were really struggling with dental costs. POWWR followed up using some anonymous messenger. They asked more questions, they used our pulse surveys to do that, and they introduced a healthcare cash plan. So now people know their benefits exist because they asked for them. And that's the difference between surveys that feel like tick box exercises and surveys that people actually believe in, is making sure that full feedback loop is there and complete. So how can we fix this mistake? There's a few different things we can do here. One is committing to a results sharing timeline before the survey even launches. So it doesn't mean that you have to go out with a "you said we did." You don't have to create a ton of change all in one go, but you can commit to sharing the results and when that will happen. Before people fill it in, just make sure you're telling them when they'll hear back, even if you can't act on everything. It's number one. Something else you can do is look for survey software like Stribe, for example, that has that anonymous reply button that lets you respond to those individual free text comments without breaking anonymity. So someone can say something really important, and I'm sure you've all seen it in your survey software. And sometimes you want to be able to follow up. Maybe they have said they wish they could see a certain benefit provided by your organization, and you know that you provide that benefit, they just don't know about it. That's one of the biggest ones we see from our customers. Now you would be able to reply to them and let them know. So on that one-to-one level, you're able to provide that employee support. It also means you can get more context if someone shared something and you want to ask more questions. So you might be able to get more context and really understand what's going on behind their feedback. So not only do they feel like you're taking their feedback seriously, but you're able to get more context over that problem that ultimately will help you solve that problem for everyone much more satisfyingly. There's also looking for things like "you said we did" features. So publishing those results back to your people inside the same platform that the survey was ran on. That gives them a bank of questions that they can go back and revisit and see what you were working on, see what you said, and what that feedback piece really looks like. And be honest about the things that you can't change. That's my final piece of advice. It's okay sometimes to say, "we heard you on pay, here's why we can't act right now." It builds that trust more than silence does. So always be brave about how you're feeding back to folk. And my mouse has gone walkies today. So, okay, we're going to have a little look, 5 minutes in the product, because I think this really brings it to life for you, especially for folk that are maybe having a think about the way they can run their surveys better in the future. Having a little look at how a survey is run in tools like this is really interesting, just to make sure that you're kind of getting all of those tips and tricks in there. So we're going to look at things like our survey builder, anonymity controls, AI summary heat maps, and the anonymous messenger as well. So I'm just going to switch my, apologies, I have my computer is all over the place today. So we're just going to share this screen now. Perfect. So mistake one that we spoke about was the too long, too infrequent kind of surveys. And oftentimes this comes because you are maybe sat there thinking, oh gosh, I've got to write another survey. I don't know what to ask, not sure what to think about. Using our kind of AI summaries, they will actually suggest themes to explore for your next pulse survey. And then all you need to do in Stribe is you can either explore that via our question bank. I'm just going to move my laptop over a little bit. You can explore that via our question bank. So you can see we've got loads of different themes that you can explore, from mental health, well-being, all benchmarked too, which is really great. So lots of different ways to get started quickly. But if you do have ideas for a theme that you need to explore for your next survey, you can actually just quick start with AI. And this is where you can kind of pop in some ideas. So I want to ask a question about manager, quality, and communication. And that will then build you out an amazing survey that's all kind of pre-checked, so you know that the questions are going to be really great. It will also, if you edit those questions, flag any poorly worded ones as well. So it means that you are getting some inbuilt people science advice with Stribe. So you're getting a really quick survey. It's built it in a really amazing way. And it gives you confidence in running kind of those shorter, more pulse surveys. So mistake two is around that anonymity piece. And we spoke about the fact that we need a lot of kind of public facing communications when it comes to the employee side, and the fact that, you know, we have a page on our website, any employee can Google it before they fill in a survey, and we go through in detail how we work on anonymity for each feature. So lots of kind of trust is built in the system to ensure that employees feel really comfortable and confident sharing all of the amazing detailed feedback that we know is really crucial for you to create that change that really reflects what they want to see. Excuse me. The next mistake was looking at kind of results arriving too late. And this was kind of because it takes a lot of time to communicate, analyze, and understand our survey results. So this is what our survey reports look like in Stribe. As soon as your survey results close, you can click a button and generate these executive summaries. Those will take minutes to generate, and they read through all of your survey questions and give you a full summary of how your survey has been performing. So it gives you those key themes, those recommendations, and those action planning points almost instantly. And that gives you that board ready insight almost within the same day. You can also include these in those read-only share links that I mentioned as well. So, you know, when you're thinking about producing board reports, that all can be shared to them without producing any extra kind of PowerPoints or even having to go near a spreadsheet. And when we're thinking about bringing those managers on board, we can actually filter our reports by each of the different teams. My demo account is not showing any right now, but if I move to this report, you will see it here. So we can filter by anything like teams, for example. That will update your survey summary to reflect your filter, and you can share that with that manager. So you're no longer having to work on that team by team report and commentary either. It's all in one place for you and all instant. So the other thing we spoke a little bit about was how averages hide the real story. So alongside this AI exec summary, where you're really going to start to see those key themes that are being pulled out, and you can really dig into the detail of some of the teams and the hotspot areas. We also have things like heat maps. And these do a really amazing job of filtering down that organizational wide report into things like your single teams or other demographic areas. So this you can see here, everything's kind of looking fine if we're looking at an organizational kind of level survey report. But actually, when we're looking at a team basis, we can see how that can very easily hide where these hotspots are, and where we need to kind of maybe provide extra support, work with that manager more closely, or dig into what exactly is going on from the feedback of that team so we can start to understand why those scores are so low. And you can do that in Stribe at the click of a button for any of the demographics that matter to you. And you don't need to worry about collecting this via the survey at the start. It's all preloaded into Stribe, so you can just click a button and understand where those hotspots are. So you can see with length of service, it's instantly kind of emphasized our onboarding might need some improvement. And then the final kind of mistake we spoke about was that the feedback loop never closes. And there was a couple of kind of key features I wanted to show you here that I think are really interesting. So this is a kind of question report. So you can see here, we've asked, I'd recommend my organization as a great place to work. And as we scroll down, we can see all of those lovely features I spoke to you about. So the benchmarking and how much context that gives us. And underneath, we can see the word tiles here. We can also see our word cloud as well. And as we scroll further down, we can see that reply button. So that's where we can start to give that one-to-one support. For example, if someone has clicked work-life balance or maybe management, we can start to go back and see where the lower scores are and start to really kind of go back to them, ask questions, provide support. And that's all anonymous. So you build that trust, you build that conversation, you have the ability to do that in a very, very trusting way. So these kinds of free text comments on our survey, we would want to go back to, but for things like Microsoft Forms, traditionally we wouldn't be able to. So that's just a kind of few little ways, I guess, to bring to life how, in Stribe, we can start to see where those mistakes and the way the software is built can kind of help you overcome some of those mistakes and make it much easier in your day-to-day to do that. Because I appreciate oftentimes when we are thinking about, some of the content that we share in these webinars, it can be really difficult to conceptualize how that will come through for us in the software that we're using. So hopefully that has helped kind of bring that to life a little bit for you. So I guess just to summarize, we'll look at the full picture, the 5 mistakes that we've kind of spoken about, what goes wrong with each one, and where we can kind of bring that to life a little bit and support you guys with those mistakes and overcoming them in Stribe. The common thread across all of them is generic survey tools just weren't built for the job. They do give you data, but they don't necessarily give you direction. So if you are finding yourself, for example, maybe sending survey results that are too long, maybe you're too rarely sending them, you're going to be starting to introduce things like survey fatigue and thinner data and thinner feedback from employees. So things like thinking about moving to focus poll surveys and finding a tool that really supports you with building great surveys will really help. If you're finding it's that anonymity piece that's really coming to the forefront for you and your surveys, you're going to be seeing a softening in your survey feedback from colleagues. So thinking about moving to an external platform, particularly ones that really shout about anonymity, is quite a good change for you to be thinking about. If you're seeing and feeling that results are arriving too late, maybe you are pushing against that brick wall with leadership. Apologies, my cat's just fallen off the desk. She's fine. She's just pulled my charging cord down, but that's okay. I'll get it another time. Maybe your results are you're pushing against a brick wall with leadership. I think that's where I got up to. And you're just feeling like your survey results and survey feedback are really missing at the moment when it comes to that action planning piece and that forward-looking piece. things like AI survey summaries will really change the game for you. Those instant team reports as well, where you're bringing managers into the conversation just at the click of a button, will really, really support and help you feel like that employee survey process is moving again. So the other one is kind of that averages piece. If you do have a feeling that your team scores are perhaps where those hotspots are, and your survey organization, your kind of average scores are amazing, they're doing really well, and you can't really identify where those problem pieces are, and you're also struggling with your survey software to really understand where those hotspots are, it may be that there's just a couple of extra graphs or figures you need in your survey reports via your survey software to help you find those, to make sure that your problems don't go unspotted. So things like your heat maps and things like your team level filtering will really, really help with that. And then finally, closing that feedback loop, the biggest problem of them all, it's the one that we talk about a lot, and I know will be on your in your mind. So things like, it's going to be eroding your employee trust, and it's going to see your response rates fall as well. It's not a difficult ship to turn around. It's just making sure that you've got the tools there, and they're the right tools for you to help you do that. So, in addition to all of the things we've spoken about, things like having that anonymous messenger, having that "you said we did" built in. So there's a library of evidence there that you are constantly working on for your staff, are all really, really, really key, and will really support you and just make that process easier, make you feel more confident about that process as well. So that's just a few kind of a bit of a summary and a few kind of extra tips for you there. So we're going to move on to the Q&A now. So I can see no one's asked any questions today. We're very quiet. Maybe it's the pre-Easter lull. I know everyone and their energy levels are a little lower this week. So it's absolutely fine if you guys don't have any questions. Maybe I've just done a good job and covered everything. That's fine too. But you can ask questions anonymously if you want. Like I say, we're big advocates for anonymity. So with the time that we've got left, which is about 10 minutes, we will answer any questions. So if you do want to get them in now. But I did also want to mention that we're offering a free 30-minute feedback health check as a thank you for joining us today. We'll look at your current survey approach, what tool you're using, when you last ran a survey, what happened afterwards, and we'll tell you honestly kind of what's working and what isn't. So we'll take this session a little bit further and give you some ideas that are really unique to you and really conscious of the kind of teams and environments you're working with. So if you're looking for some ideas to make some really great changes for your next survey, this will actually be a really useful session for you. You can book it via the QR code on the screen right now, but I'll also make sure we include a link in your follow-up as well. Book it today while it's front of mind. And you can see the cat's jumping around behind me, so she's absolutely fine. But yeah, book your session today while it's front of mind. We have had some really great feedback from these sessions, and they do get booked up quite quickly. So that's there for you. So let's get into questions. I've got about 10 minutes. What's come up for you? Any challenges you're seeing in your own surveys at the moment? Any advice or tips you want me to share? Anything kind of going on? I'll give you a couple of minutes just to type in to the box if you do want to use this time just to pick my brains on things. I know one kind of topic I was speaking to a customer, a potential customer about this morning was how we actually move from an annual survey schedule to a pulse survey schedule, because it can be quite a difficult process, or it can seem quite overwhelming. So one of the things we spoke about was everyone on this call today will have maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4 themes that have come out of your annual survey that you need and want to focus on. And those will form the basis of your pulse surveys going forward. So it allows you to gather kind of more up-to-date feedback on what changes you've been making, how colleagues are feeling about that theme now. So it might be communication, it might be leadership, it might be rewards and recognition. Those would be your focuses of your survey. So what we always recommend is for that first pulse survey after your annual survey, you include maybe 1 or 2 questions for each of those themes. And then you keep one that's a little bit more open. And this allows you to keep half an eye on what might be coming through for colleagues, what they might be thinking about and feeling in their day-to-day, but you aren't necessarily asking a direct question on. So in Stribe, when you have that AI summary, it's pulling through anything new that you're not seeing and not thinking about from that question, so you can surface it and make sure that you're thinking about it for either kind of extra support for colleagues, your action planning, or maybe a future survey. So I'm not seeing any questions, which is great. I'll take that as a job well done from me, but we will absolutely leave the questions call out open for you. So if you do want to reply to my follow-up email later with any questions, I appreciate it's a bit more of an open forum here, so not everyone is always comfortable or happy to do that. But yeah, that's everything. Before you go, if there's one thing from today that really landed for you, do share it on LinkedIn or let us know via email. We always love to hear feedback. And if you do have any ideas for future webinars like this, where it's a little bit more kind of getting into the detail of employee surveys, I'd really love to hear it, because we're going to start doing these probably every 2 or 3 weeks. So anything that you have questions on or challenges on, we will absolutely do a webinar on it. So please do let me know. And yeah, it's the best way to keep the conversation going is via email, LinkedIn, etc. So do share anything that really resonated with you. And if you want to talk more specifically about your own organisation and what you're going through, the feedback health check is there for you too. Thanks so much for being here. I really, really appreciate your time. I will stop sharing my screen now. And I really look forward to seeing you all on the next one. Thank you so much. Have an amazing afternoon, an amazing Easter break, and I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.